Breaking the story, the Cowboys have now confirmed that Dallas and the Steelers have finalized a trade that will send wide receiver George Pickens to Dallas in exchange for draft pick compensation. The trade is expected to include a third-round pick, other pick swaps, and is expected, it's the original story said, expected to be finalized today. But again, the Cowboys literally 1 minute ago just confirmed it. We'll have Louis Riddick, we'll have Ryan Clark. Brooke Pryor covers the Steelers for us, and Peter Schrager jumped in an Uber from Brooklyn real quick when the story broke this morning. Talk to me, how in the world and why in the world did this happen?
Well, the Cowboys obviously have a hole at the number 2 wide receiver position. They did not address it in the NFL draft, and Jerry Jones gave us a bit of a sneak peek that they were going to be looking, and there are some potential trades that they have in their back pocket. Truth of the matter is George Pickens had run his time. He's in the final year of a 3-year of a contract. He was going to be able to hit free agency after this year as the Steelers were not re-upping him, which made him available. The Cowboys were aggressive. They go and they offer a third-round pick and a pick swap. The question, of course, is culturally for Dallas. What does this mean? Pickens, and Brooke could speak to this, sometimes could be demonstrative on the sidelines. Sometimes would throw a fit if he didn't get the ball. We saw on a Christmas Day game him throw his helmet on the sidelines. Mike Tomlin, obviously, it was the end of the rope there, and they are willing to move on. Brian Schottenheimer has been preaching culture, culture, culture. Yes, the stats are there and the yards are there, but is a change of scenery really what's needed for George Pickens, or is this a player that might upset the apple cart for a team that all eyes are on with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb as the number 1 option? And
all eyes might be covered right now in Pittsburgh, trying to figure out what this offense might look like here, and it might be too scary to avert your eyes because it just looks terrible at this moment, frankly. Brooke Pryor covers the Steelers day in, day out. I'll ask it to you as bluntly as I can, Brooke. Why did the Steelers trade away George Pickens today?
Well, I'd like to go back to 2 things that Schrager just said, culture and that Christmas Day game, because there's no better example of kind of the headache that the Steelers would deal with, because while there is a respect for George Pickens, the talented player on the field, there was a lot that came with George Pickens off the field. At that Christmas Day game, George Pickens arrived to the stadium less than 90 minutes before kickoff. Inactives had already been announced, and I don't know if you remember, at this time, he was also dealing with a hamstring injury. He showed up late, came in the media entrance. This is not normal. There is a lot going on with George Pickens off the field. I think the Steelers looked at this and said, look, he is a good player on the field, but when we look at how this could play out down the line, he could be in line for a contract extension. If he doesn't get that contract extension, is there a holdout? Does it become a distraction? And how explosive does that locker room become if things don't go well this year, or if he becomes, number 2 to DK Metcalf's number 1? This is a situation where it could eventually be addition by subtraction.
That is extraordinary insight, and it begets our next question to you, Brooke, and that is one I'm sure you have been asked literally every day since sometime in January. What does all of this mean for Aaron Rodgers?
Well, sometimes I'm asked it 3 times a day. This will be one of those days. I cannot imagine that Aaron Rodgers was not aware that George Pickens could be traded. The Steelers have remained in constant contact with him since these conversations began about him potentially landing in Pittsburgh. Based on my conversations in the building, not only are the Steelers aware of what Rodgers has been dealing with in his personal life off the field, but I'm going to guess that that phone works 2 ways, and the Steelers have kept him informed of potential things that they could be going through. I don't think that this is a move that would catch Aaron Rodgers by surprise.
Oh, that's exceptional. I'm told we do have Louis Riddick. So we put together all of this football on the fly. It's an incredible job by our team getting our people together here. And Louis, you are the best for jumping in on short notice and doing this. Let's do this from both sides. Let's start with Dallas. The addition of George Pickens, Louis, trading away a third-round pick. They put George Pickens on the other side from CeeDee Lamb. What does this mean for the Cowboys?
Look, on the football field, Greeny, obviously it makes sense because we've been saying for quite a while that they need a number 2 opposite of CD. I mean, that's been something that's been said continuously. But look, football isn't just about how it looks on paper and how it looks when you go out there on a walkthrough during OTAs and minicamp. It's about how does this sustain itself and how does it continue to grow as the season goes along? And is it something, especially when you hit the inevitable valleys that you're going to hit during the season, is it something that will still be able to be maintained and something that doesn't become a distraction? Clearly in Pittsburgh, they thought as though this player was a distraction. I heard you just say, look, Brian Schottenheimer has been preaching culture, culture, culture. Everyone around Dallas, everyone outside of Dallas, everyone who talks about Dallas preaches about culture. Well, if Mike Tomlin has decided, and Mr. Art Rooney has decided that this young man doesn't really fit the culture anymore, that the talent is not good enough for us to continue to tolerate it, then what the heck makes you think that Dallas is set up in any way, shape, or form in order to handle that kind of thing or absorb that kind of behavior and or presence in their locker room? So look, they're shooting their shot, right? They're trying to make this football team be one that is competitive in the NFC and competitive, in terms of being a Super Bowl contender. But this is going to be fun to watch now because who knows how this is going to turn out down there.
I would add this. Desperate times do call for desperate measures, and CeeDee Lamb got 73 more targets than the number 2 wide receiver in Dallas last year. There weren't a ton of options out there. They're rolling the dice, but to what Lewis and Brooke are saying, this is a real roll of the dice if you're trying to preach one thing as a first-year coach, who a lot of people have a side eye about that hiring anyway because they didn't go through the traditional coaching process.
Parenthetically, and maybe this is particularly interesting only to me, can we put up A22? This was another tweet from Shefty this morning. It's just, I find this part of the story fascinating. George Pickens is going into the last year of his contract. He's going to want a new deal. His agent is David Mulgeta, whose name Cowboys owner Jerry Jones said he did not know while he was talking about a new deal for another one of his clients, Micah Parsons. Remember when they went through the whole, I don't even know his agent's name thing? Well, that's who he just made the trade for George Pickens with, and that's who he's going to have to deal with on a new deal now, not only for Micah, but also for George Pickens. So that's the Cowboys side of this. Louis Riddick, what on God's green earth are the Steelers going to do for offense this coming season?
I don't know. They don't know. Arthur doesn't know. He's trying to figure it out. He's probably sitting there right now, sitting there with his head going, let's see. Well, I guess Caleb Johnson's going to run the ball a lot. I guess Jaylen Warren's going to run the ball a lot. I guess they're going to be a football team that's going to be really major in 12 personnel, really try to – look, Arthur's going to have to be on top of it. Let's just put it that way in terms of his play call and his sequencing. The run is going to have to set up the pass. Whoever the heck the quarterback is going to be, whether it's going to be Mason, whether it's going to be Will Howard, whether it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, they're going to have to be on top of it. The defense is going to have to be on top of it because, quite honestly – look, and we don't, okay, let's just put it this way. Just think about it from this perspective. When you're talking about free agency and veteran player movement, all right, nobody knows more about the player that you just shipped away than the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? They know everything there is to know about George Pickens, and they said, we're not going to sign you to a long-term extension. You're out of here. They know nothing besides whatever their sources told them in Seattle about DK Metcalf. They know nothing about what it's going to be like once he gets there. What it's going to be like when he gets with the quarterback, whoever the heck the quarterback is going to be. And I know he threw with Aaron. They know nothing about it. They have a new running back. They have really one wide receiver. Look, for Pittsburgh, there's all kinds of questions right now up in there. There's nothing but for a team that has really been synonymous with consistency, stability, kind of being like right out there. Look, what you see is what you get. What are you going to get from Pittsburgh this year? What are you going to get? You know you're going to get Mike Tomlin. After that, you're going to get Cam Hayward. After that, I don't know what you're going to get. This is kind of maybe one of the most uncertain, unpredictable seasons started in their offseason by Pittsburgh that I can remember ever.
Ever is a pretty long time, and yet it is probably, for that franchise that has had 3 head coaches since 1969, I agree. This is not their usual MO. Brooke Pryor, again, you're around them every day. Put a finishing touch on this for me for the moment.
Well, I'd like to say that, first of all, you're telling me a Steelers team's going to have to run the ball well and use their tight ends well. I feel like they've done that before. Certainly Arthur Smith has. And by the way, when you talk about Mike Tomlin being done with a wide receiver and trading a wide receiver, the last big splashy trade I can remember, they shipped Chase Claypool to the Chicago Bears for that 2nd-round pick. He is not in the league as far as I know. So I think that to me, that's the precedent I'm looking at as far as when they let go of a wide receiver, they've tried everything they can, and it has not worked out well in the long run for that receiver.
And Antonio Brown before that, and others that have been there and that they have made the decision to move on from eventually. All right, everyone stay where you are on the football. We'll get back to all of it. Ryan Clark, our favorite Steeler, is going to make his way in here. We'll get his perspective.
Móc nối vào và siết chặt cái phần len màu hồng lại nhé. Đây mình siết phần len hồng lại. Đây bây giờ sẽ móc lên. Hàng này thì cũng cứ một mũi vào một chân là được. Tiếp nha mọi người. Mũi tiếp theo. Đấy, móc luân phiên vào thế này là được. Tiếp tục móc xuống nhé. Bây giờ móc mũi tiếp theo, cũng một mũi vào một chân. Rồi, mũi nữa này. Đấy, mình móc cái này là được. Móc nối vào cho đến hết nhé. Tiếp tục móc. Rồi, mũi nữa này. Đấy, móc lần lượt như này là được. Tiếp nha, móc nối cho này. Tiếp tục móc. Rồi, mũi nữa này. Bây giờ sẽ nối vào đây và siết dây. Đấy, sẽ được cái phần túi như này nhé. Túi 3 màu rất là xinh rồi. Mình cỡ thêm chút len ra để làm nhá. Bây giờ mình móc màu xanh thôi, nên là sẽ cắt đi hai cái màu này. Mình cắt hai cái màu hồng và vàng này nhé. Bây giờ sẽ móc tiếp vào. Mình sẽ đếm mũi nhá. Bây giờ sẽ móc đến cái phần quai túi đấy. Mình đếm 1 này, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Rồi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Móc vào cái chân thứ 5 nhé. Móc vào chân thứ 5. Đây nha mọi người. Mình sẽ được cái phần túi có quai sách như thế này. Bây giờ sẽ móc tiếp những mũi tiếp theo. Đây mình có khi là móc vào chân thứ 4 đi, móc vào chân thứ 5 nó hơi bị choãi ra quá. Đây, móc vào chân thứ 4. Này là hợp hơn đấy. Bây giờ móc tiếp những cái mũi tiếp theo vào nhá. Mũi tiếp nữa. Mũi tiếp. Móc luân phiên từng mũi như này là được nhé. Đấy, mình sẽ móc tiếp. Mình lật mặt sau ra nhé, lật mặt sau ra. Mình căn chỉnh để cho cái phần quai mặt sau nó sẽ khớp với cái phần quai mặt trước, nên là sẽ phải lật mặt sau ra để căn. Đây, mình căn vào. Mình móc tiếp những cái mũi bính lên nha mọi người. Rồi móc miệng mũi.